Free beer and hot wings in the morning. Grand Rapids rocks all day. 97.9 GRD rocks.
Morning shower, 70 the high. It's about 50 now. It's going to rain a good portion of the day until mid-afternoon, at least that's what it's saying.
Yep.
The Lansing Journal has a great article that I saw it tagged on Facebook by a friend, and now, an hour and a half later, I assume it just went up this morning, this article, or late yesterday. It went up at 10:30 last night is when they posted it.
All right.
By Cody Tucker wrote this.
Tuck.
Now it's getting retweeted by national college football writers, and it's going to end up being a big story because it's called Finding Charles Rogers.
Okay.
For those who pay attention to college football here in the state of Michigan, that's one of the biggest names to ever play. He was with the Michigan State Spartans, and eventually a Detroit Lion, a very high draft pick.
That was a
third,
while
maybe?
ago. What was that, like 04?
That was near he won the Blitnikoff Trophy in 2002, given to the nation's top wide receiver. So I'm going to read a bunch of this because it's pretty remarkable, his path. I mean, he was, at the time, you'll hear them, he was referred to by Sports Illustrated as the best player in college football.
Okay.
Charles Rogers walked into Michigan State University football building for the first time in 15 years on a cloudy, cold day last November.
This is going to be really sad, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of, there's some what might have been and everything else.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
He'd been reluctant to return to campus where he'd been a star, worried that the disappointments were all anybody would remember. Without prompting from former MSU teammate TJ Duckett, he would not have come. I was facing my fear, bro, Rogers said, skinny now, emphatically throwing his tattooed arms in the air. Inside the football center that day, he and Duckett found themselves in front of a pillar encased in glass. Inside, Rogers' photo, along with a replica of the Blitnikoff Trophy given to the nation's top wide receiver. Two of his former coaches, Mark D'Antonio and Ken Manny, were in the building. Manny, the Spartans' strength coach, greeted him with a hug. It was a beautiful thing, Rogers said, wiping a tear off his left cheek. It took so much off my shoulders, man. The joy I felt to see everybody. No one throwing judgment on you was like I never left. I was touched. I was in tears, man. I was really crying. Just the S I have been through. I didn't know how they would respond to me. They said, MSU is your home. You're always welcome. And it says, that was the moment Rogers realized he wasn't alone, TJ Duckett said. No matter what happened or what he thinks is the worst possible thing, that's not the case, he said. There are a lot of people who still care and love him. I could see him and what it meant to him.
Yeah, you weren't a bust. You weren't like one of those other athletes who broke their leg.
Yeah.
Where they had to boot him out.
Yeah. The trophy case, a reminder of what Rogers once was, of a spectacular leaping touchdown grab or a bunch of them roaring crowds at Spartan Stadium. Or the fact that in 2 seasons before college football was super pass happy, he caught 135 passes and 27 touchdowns. Those are big numbers for that era. There'd be big numbers now.
Yeah.
On the other side of the case was the 2002 edition of Sporting News with Rogers on the cover, screaming as he glides through the air. Meet college football's best player, it read in bold white letters. Smaller headline on the front that kept Rogers away for all these years. Size, speed, hands. Charles Rogers has it all, including a very bright future in the NFL. That was a certainty. That was true once. Again, this is from the Lansing Journal. The man who was once the best player in college football works at Uptown Motors, an auto repair shop off Palm Beach Boulevard in Fort Myers, Florida. His business card says he's the general manager, but admittedly he doesn't know much about cars. He'll help with taping up wheels for painting or help lift a motor here and there, but as far as day-to-day maintenance, Rogers said he's more like a PR guy for the shop, which is owned by a childhood friend, Mel Washington. The building is painted black, scalding hot to the touch in the Florida sun, and surrounded by a privacy fence and razor wire. Rogers is eager to show off a pair of pit bulls that sit in a cage on the hot concrete out back. There are more dogs inside that he glowingly refers to as the hyenas. You can't touch these ones, he smiled. He's 35 now, wearing $600 shorts and a Walmart T-shirt. He has tattoos on his arms that together spell out Sag Nasty, an homage to his hometown, Saginaw. He's nearly 30 pounds down from his MSU playing weight of 205 pounds. He is shaky. His hands never seem to be still. He was the number 2 pick in the 2003 draft, signed a $39.5 million contract with the Lions. That included a guaranteed signing bonus of $14.4 million.
Oh, my God.
He once
What?
lived in a $1 million mansion in the Detroit suburbs with a Mercedes-Benz and Cadillacs lining the driveway. He had expensive jewelry, the latest rims, often spent expensive weekends with friends, drinking by the pool in the clubs of Vegas. That party has been over for a while. He says injuries derailed his career. You may not remember, but I think most Lions fans remember because it was heartbreaking at the time. 2 broken collarbones in his first 2 NFL seasons with the Lions, but it was a painkiller addiction coupled with failed drug tests and NFL suspensions for marijuana that helped to aid his premature exit from the league. He's considered one of the biggest busts in NFL history. Remember that first game he played? I don't remember the numbers, but I remember as a Lions fan, him catching a touchdown pass early on, just lighting it up. Well, he was what Calvin Johnson ended up being, a guy that if it was anywhere within his sphere of influence, he was going to come down with the ball. He still smokes marijuana every day. In his mind, injuries and Vicodin ended his career. Marijuana didn't. The auto shop, he says, is his first real job. He likes it. Around the corner, Basil's, a pizza and sub shop near the end of a long strip mall where he goes to play Mortal Kombat and drink free soda on his breaks. Sitting at a high-top table, leaning forward on the bar stool, he wanted to chat about the past and how he got there. That's pretty wild.
Does $14 million go?
I think they may address it in this article. I think the Lions, when he continued to get in trouble and get suspended,
they got out of it.
I think they got some of that signing bonus because he.
I got you.
But it'll probably say
that would make sense.
There's a lush green lot at the corner of River and Wisner Streets in Saginaw. It's empty now, but it was once the site of a middle-class home in the heart of a blue-collar neighborhood. Beagle hunting dogs roamed the backyard. The trees near the sidewalk served as a blockade from the busy street that made its way down. Rogers' maternal grandparents, Benjamin and Eula Rogers, lived there. It used to be a safe place. My grandfather raised me, Rogers said. He was my rock. Like most in the neighborhood, Benjamin Rogers worked for General Motors. He was a church-going man, and Rogers said it brought structure to his life. Benjamin Rogers also loved to hunt and fish, something he passed down to his oldest grandson. Rogers' relationship with his mother, a bit more chaotic. Kathy Rogers did a brief stint in prison for welfare fraud when Rogers was 6. He said his mother was never the same after she was released. Sometimes he would stay with her on the north side of Saginaw. In 2012, Rogers was arrested for threatening his mother after he said she stole $100,000 from him. According to the police report, he threatened to blow her mouth out and said he was willing to do the time. The only time he did for the threat and a handful of misdemeanor charges was a short stint in a rehab facility. I have a problem with that, he said. I said some things. I was hot. They still don't speak. Boy, that is sad by itself, that anyone would be to a point where you think your mom ripped you off and you say those things. You know you've been through some hard times with someone. Kathy Rogers didn't respond to messages sent. Don Durrett, Rogers' high school football coach at Saginaw High, remembers the bickering. Rogers and his mother both leaned on the coach for guidance from time to time. It wasn't until 3 years after Rogers graduated from high school that Saginaw became the most violent city in America. It was already on its way. One side of town is for guys who like to shoot. The other side is for thieves, said Washington, Rogers' close friend and now his boss. Which is really crazy because I grew up going there to hang out at that mall. and
no big deal.
I mean, it wasn't considered the safest town. But I never thought, don't go to Saginaw.
I didn't realize it was ever considered the most violent town.
Yeah, me neither. It says, said Washington, Rogers' close friend, now his boss. He said he joined the Sunnyside gang as a kid, got shot in the back when he was a teenager. One brother was murdered in a drive-by. The other brother shot in the neck and paralyzed. God, it's crazy that I can't imagine growing up like that. If you make it past 25, it's a blessing, Washington said. Saginaw is bad. Now it's even worse. I come from the bottom of the streets. South Saginaw is the worst neighborhood in America. Oof. Despite the chaos in his life, including fathering 2 children in high school and suffering a punctured lung because of a stab wound, Rogers flourished. He was a state champion sprinter, a standout basketball player, and a star under the Friday Night Lights. At Saginaw High, photos of Rogers still hang in the hallways. A large yellow banner in the gymnasium wall features his 22 jersey. It celebrates his status as a high school All-American. Draymond Green, Lamar Woodley are the only other athletes to have their jerseys retired at Saginaw High. Inside Durrett's office, an old newspaper clipping sits just below the clock. Homegrown is a headline. The photo shows Rogers breaking a tackle in his Lions uniform. Not a day goes by the coach doesn't think about Rogers. He called him the best athlete to ever come out of that city. No one else comes close. The high school track coach, D'Eddie Sanders, agrees. It's all wild. It goes on to talk about his time there and growing up.
It's a great read.
and then eventually talks about him going to Michigan State. On the road in South Bend in 2001, the Spartans were tied at 10 with less than 2 minutes on the clock, facing 3rd and 6 from the Irish 47. Quarterback Ryan Van Dyke took a 4-step drop and hit Rodgers on a slant. The rest is history. Rodgers beat the entire Notre Dame secondary before leaping into the end zone for the game-winning touchdown. We had to have a play, said Vickerson, who played defensive tackle for the Spartans from 01 to 04. He went and got it. That's Chuck Rodgers. Rodgers was the top-ranked wide receiver in the nation coming out of high school. People thought he'd land at Michigan, Florida State, or Tennessee. Bobby Williams and the Spartans won him over late. Grades and low ACT scores kept him on the sidelines during the first season, but he proved to be worth the wait. In 2 short years, he rewrote the history books. Then it says he went on to become the first receiver to record back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons and broke an NCAA record, catching a touchdown pass in 13 straight games. And again, this is from an era in college football, even though it's only 17 years ago, 16 years ago, where people still ran the football with 2 tight ends and a fullback, and they weren't throwing it everywhere. I mean, those numbers probably, now it happens every year.
No big deal.
Yeah. Or was still doing the option back then.
Just about somewhere. Like Nebraska was still running.
Oh, yeah.
If they passed
still,
6 times a game, it was a miracle.
Yeah.
Everybody who saw him play, guys who spent a decade in the pros, still say that if he didn't get hurt, he's the best wide receiver they've ever seen.
Wow.
Which is really saying something. Another miraculous catch against Notre Dame that cemented Rodgers' legacy. His life would change forever that week, for good and bad. September 15th, 2002, Rodgers received a call that his grandfather had died. The man who raised him, instilled discipline, and taught him to hunt and fish was gone. I think about him every day, especially on Sundays, Rodgers said, staring down at the table inside the Fort Myers restaurant. He was a church man. If I'm going through the TV and I see a hunting show, I think about him. He is in my heart. 6 days later, with a heavy heart and unsure if he would even play, Rodgers snagged a 21-yard touchdown catch between 2 defenders, somehow keeping his left foot in bounds to take the lead late over the Irish. He called it a money game. That November, he declared for the draft. I knew I was going to be drafted in the top 5 after that one. Benjamin Rodgers wouldn't be there to see it. The day Rodgers signed with the Spartans had been one of the happiest days of his life. That was a glow to him, referring to his grandfather. Big deal. He would go to work at GM and tell everyone about me. He got him some MSU gear. It's something that I miss. I was his pride and joy. Rodgers silent for just a moment, and then he adds, he was mine. So the only person who's had your back?
That seems to be the case.
Rodgers never, okay.
A few times,
So
when it comes to athletes.
Right? Yeah. And so then it says, the Motor City Meltdown. Again, this is all from the Lansing State Journal. I'm skipping some of it if you want to see it. You can find it there, lansingstatejournal.com. Rodgers never Googles himself, so he didn't know there's a YouTube video called Detroit Lions fan burns Charles Rogers jerseys. Boy, thanks for telling him.
Justin was just watching that.
Were you really?
Yeah.
It takes place in the parking lot outside Ford Field before a game in 2012, a way for fans to purge past draft debacles. You have to try to imagine the pressure he was feeling, said Joey Harrington, former Lions quarterback, someone who knows a thing or two about the pressure. There are internet videos with his number 3 jersey going up in flames. I would participate in that one. What happened to Charles is partly his fault. You have to take ownership for your life. It's also partly the Lions' fault, and part of it is just plain fluke. Rodgers called being drafted by Detroit a blessing and a curse. You do have to wonder if he ends up a little further away.
If
when
he's on
injured.
a better team.
Yeah.
If he's on a better team who's throwing the ball in places that he's not as likely to get his head cracked off.
Or just you end up on a team where there's a mentor. At that point, the Lions were a dumpster fire and had been.
Yeah, there wasn't anything good going on back then.
Yeah, well, maybe, yeah. We made the playoffs a couple years in a row, Joe.
Heard that.
FYI.
Heard that.
He was less than 2 hours from his hometown, which meant only 100 miles from Leeches, he said. People wanted a piece of his pie. It was like a party all the time. Maybe if I wasn't close to home, it would have been better. No distractions. The distractions came early and often in his rookie year. At the NFL Combine, he tested positive for a urine masking agent, which showed excess water in his diluted sample. Later confirmed Rodgers had also failed 2 drug tests during his time at East Lansing. In that NFL debut, the one that I said I remembered watching and getting my hopes up, as a Lions fan, we do every time this happens, he hauled in a pair of touchdowns in a win over Arizona. Felt like a small glimpse into Rodgers' big future in the Motor City. It was just a continuation of what we saw him do at Michigan State. Rodgers' big future in Detroit seemed to validate the Lions taking the troubled receiver high in the draft. But a month later, his season ended with a broken right collarbone sustained during practice. He had been the team's leading receiver with 243 yards on 23 catches, 3 touchdowns, all from Harrington. If you're Joey Harrington, I wonder if you ever sit back and go, boy, if that guy doesn't break his collarbone in practice,
we might do something.
Maybe he's not a bust too.
Right.
Who knows?
No, that guy was a cheese and crackers type of man.
Yeah.
Maybe, but even with him, they still lost 4 of 5.
Yeah,
that season.
Right. Yeah, they
won week 1 and then didn't win again until week 9.
Harrington, who was selected number 3 overall in 2002, expected Harrington to Rodgers to become the next great pass-catch combo. He referred to Rodgers as unconventional, but added that when the lights came on, he knew he'd be there. He used the words like trust. If the Lions needed to move the chains, he was throwing it to number 80. Instead, they played a total of 6 games together, which is, just as a side note, far less tragic than the life that Charles Rodgers has lived, whether it's self-inflicted or otherwise, is the fact that Lions fans had 2 top 3 draft picks and they played 6 games together, drafted back-to-back years. That's about right.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's about right. Harrington believes Rodgers' tendency to catch the ball in his body led to the second broken collarbone suffered during the opening game of the 2004 season. Only 3 offensive plays into the game, and Rodgers' season was over. We had just moved back to Michigan, so I was excited to be able to watch the Lions on TV again. Opening game, here we go. Let's get hyped up.
And
are you serious?
And he's done for the year.
Boom.
It was a basic route. Instead of catching the ball with his hands, he cradled it, put him in an awkward position, and it snapped again. His career went sideways. The Lions sent him home to regroup and rehab in the fall of 2004. That's when he started down a dangerous path. He got hooked on them damn things, he said. Talking about Vicodin, pain meds. The Lions were giving him out like candy, whatever you want, man. And that's true of all the teams. They were passing him out like Skittles. I was straight hooked on them things for 3 or 4 years. In 2005, the season got off to another rocky start, only this time self-imposed. He was suspended 4 games for violating the NFL's substance abuse policy. Rodgers
smoking that crap.
A little more than a month later, the Lions Rodgers had failed at least 3 drug tests. He also returned to the team overweight and without his trademark speed. That was the big problem. A little more than a month later, the Lions filed a grievance demanding more than $10 million of the $14.4 million signing bonus to be returned for breaking contract.
Yes, that's where most of it goes.
He was released, and the rest went to parties and a house and some Cadillacs and everything else.
$4 million when you're living like that can go quick.
He was released by the team the following September on the eve of their opening games. He is defiant when it comes to his dealing with the Lions. He said injuries, not drug abuse, derailed his future. He admits he smoked marijuana every day in the NFL and while at MSU. I suspect he's not the only one to do that.
No,
you should suspect that.
I doubt it.
As for paying back the $6.1 million he still owes the Lions, because he left Detroit with millions in the bank and a Vicodin addiction, so he had some money.
Yeah,
he still owes them $6.1 million. The NFL Players Association negotiated the price drop. He says, I ain't got nothing to pay them. I'm going to file bankruptcy anyway. So then his rap sheet started to fill up. He's been in trouble.
Oh, okay.
All kinds of time.
What type of things? Can I guess dogfighting?
That did pop into my head.
It seems like it's pretty likely, yeah.
Let's see. Where is it? I scrolled down.
Probably just baby drug charges. Maybe
he was busted. He was blowing through money, making bad investments in car washes and barbershops. He once gave a friend $10,000 to open a business and didn't even ask what it was for. He was arrested 6 times between September of 2008 and October of 2012 on charges ranging from assault and battery, probation violations to DUI, open container violations, and marijuana possession. So nothing horribly violent, just someone who doesn't have the life skills or the smarts to stay out of trouble.
Typical idiot things.
He kicked his prescription drug habit after a stint in a Houston rehab, and he's not touched pain pills in years. He said his last DUI in 2009 scared him straight, though he was arrested for alcohol-related issues 2 more times. The judge saved my life by putting me in the right situation, Rodgers said. He doesn't mean to say he's exactly sober. He said, I don't think marijuana was my downfall, but I can't narrow it down. I have a beer watching the game or a fight, but I smoke every day through. I smoke every day. I'm not going to lie to you. I am drug-free. Other than that,
well, your life sucks, so why not?
Boy, it is crazy seeing him. He looks thinner than me.
Yeah,
he looks like an old man.
Taller and thinner.
I think he's 6'5". I'm guessing. 6'3",
It says 6'3"
6'3"?
on NFL.com.
He looks like
But
a
if
guy
he's-
who's had a hard
So
life
he's 6'3", 180 pounds.
in a short amount of
So
time.
we're at least shaped the same, but I was never a professional athlete. I've always looked like this.
yeah,
Compared to what he looked like, he looks sickly.
right.
You know, he looks like Snoop Dogg. A little bit, you know.
He does a little bit.
You know, early on.
It says he has little family to speak of. He has 8 children, 4 boys and 4 girls, ages 10 to 19, with 4 different mothers. None of his children live with him, but he keeps in touch. He says he's a good father, but he knows he needs to work on himself before he can play a bigger role in their lives. Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Sorry.
No.
Lives with a
Probably
friend
not.
in a townhouse in a rough part of Fort Myers. Smiles and laughs with employees. Aside from Washington, his friend, he said his list of allies is a very short one. That's not surprising. Says, I'm getting my... I'm skipping ahead a bit. But it says, the Spartans, they'll probably wrap their arms around him. He probably needs it. Because
Well,
it
if
doesn't
he-
sound like he gets... Other than his pal that's helping him out in Florida, it doesn't sound like he
Yeah.
has much to do on.
No.
But what are they going to do
He
with
says,
him?
I'm getting my life together, a fresh start. Do I need a little love? Yeah. Am I still trying to find Charles Rogers? Yeah. I stay optimistic and positive. I've been to hell and back, but I stay strong. I still have faith. I'm still a young man. It ain't over. I'm going to be all right. I'm going to be all right. That is crazy. I mean, that
is.
You see all the stories, where sports helps somebody out of a hard life or whatever.
Yep.
And you see the ones where they don't make it, and it's easy to go, "Pff, idiot,
It is. but
doing
it-
drugs, and
Yeah.
you squandered an opportunity. Yeah, he did.
Yeah, but it's not that
I'm not
easy.
sure that guy had the life skills to know any better.
Well,
no,
when
and
you-
plus he didn't, he got hurt first.
If
I mean,
you're-
not that
Yes.
he didn't have some issues, because obviously he did, and he
Clearly.
may have had some. He might have drugged his way out of.
And there were a lot of people
anyway, but
who took advantage of him. But yes, he got injured, and he had a doctor who fed him, as no doubt, as many of the hardest pills you can possibly find.
There are plenty of NFL players, including other Lions, who Calvin Johnson said that that was one of the fears, was he was on pain pills so bad all the time. He was afraid he didn't know what was hurt and what wasn't.
Yeah.
And what sort of
yeah,
damage
you just
you're doing.
keep doing more damage,
I mean-
and you're constantly medicated. Then you're addicted, and your life is over. So
Hellestray played until about 2001. And he said, this would have been early in his career, so in the 80s. I think he started with the Raiders. And he said it was literally a candy jar, like big enough for a big adult's hands to fit in the top. And you would reach in if you came into the office and I had a bowl of M&Ms on the desk.
Right.
He said it was just like that.
As
Which
he
is
quotes,
nuts.
they're passing him out like Skittles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is just
it's
crazy.
It's absurd.
It could-
So it doesn't take away his personal responsibility, but just
No.
No,
I think it's good to
doesn't.
understand where
well, everybody's
not
story
all-
is different. Everybody's
considering
got a story.
everyone else he knew was lucky to live to 25.
It's
That's
not
crazy.
always as cut and dry as you would think. There are outside factors. It's not always, just do your job. Just do it.
And it could be worse because according to the NFL, he's dead.
What?
On NFL.com players pages, height 6'3", weight 220, deceased.
Does it say?
Really?
Yeah, look,
Wow.
right here.
Oh.
Well, when you owe him $6 million, they just kill you.
Yeah, he's dead to them. They
Yeah.
couldn't even put his picture up.
They even gave him a discount.
That's
Isn't that-
really
Isn't that
crazy.
idiotic? It's the NFL's website. It says he's dead.
Dead.
Deceased.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they're just talking about his career.
I
They
guess.
But I don't think so. I've never seen it written that way before on a player's info page before.
Look up Ryan Leaf. See if he's deceased.
Oh, he's got to be.
Do you think any other guys are like, I wish I could get a story that told my background so people wouldn't hate me as much?
Probably.
Like Ryan
there
Leaf,
are tons of people.
Johnny Manziel. We'll see if his comeback works out.
Yeah,
Well,
I think that's all him to blame.
I think
playing
things are going to
baseball.
work out for. I think things would have worked out for Rodgers too if he had an oil-rich family.
Yeah.
That would have, yeah.
Yeah. So he could afford to go to a rehab or at least buy his way out of some trouble.
Or had somebody who said, hey, man, you're screwing up.
A safety net.
Right. Because, once Grandpa died, that's the big what might have been. If Grandpa doesn't die and he's got that person who can say, Charles, you got to do better.
Yeah.
Who knows what happens then?
You can't keep supporting all your friends who aren't really your friends.
Because the injuries, I mean, those 2 injuries, those were a pretty big deal. But he probably could have come back.
Probably could have.
Who knows?
But yeah, when you.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's like
But
what
there's no one
happened to
there for him.
Tyson.
Yeah. It is very. It actually
when
reminds
you've
me
got
quite a
the
bit.
one guy who you
Yeah.
rely on, the father figure, the almost God figure,
Yeah.
as far as it goes, and you lose that.
Yeah.
You
Because
got no direction anymore.
the sport doesn't care about you, and the fans don't care about you
No.
unless you're winning.
Not if you let them down.
Yeah.
And then, because I know as a fan at the time, you're like, come on, idiot. I understand you getting hurt. Mm-hmm. And he became known as Fragile Rogers. But it was him getting busted for pot and everything while he was out and then getting suspended and coming back fat. As a fan, you've committed the unforgivable. And I'm sure my reaction at the time was, you've got the opportunity of a lifetime. You're the best. You could be the best ever. Or certainly in that conversation, and you blow it for weed because you can't control yourself. That's the knee-jerk reaction that I no doubt had.
Well, yeah, with no information to go on, you just have that perspective.
True. Disturbed. By the way, that article, I think it's Cody Turner is what I said. Lansing State Journal.
Oh, well done.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Great written article.
97.9 GRD Rock. See ya.